Hello, welcome to the Reframing Mindset podcast. We are clear my head of the thoughts that are preventing clarity, practice my speech, among other things. Episodes range from informative knowledge to funny stories about my experiences, and in the future, maybe include interviews. So subscribe and enjoy. Episodes drop every other day. Okay, welcome back to Reframe Mindset podcast. My name is Constant Brooks. This episode, we're in the summer. And one thing about in this summer is longer days. So, I'm recording this after work in the evening. And what happened is that you may not hear the crickets. You may not hear the crickets. And so, and if you do not hear the crickets, it's because it's summertime, bro. But summertime, but I'm working. Working. Uh, but what happened was that in this episode, we talk about another tomato harvest. Now, because as I said, if you listen to the podcast, one of the things that you read, if you listen to the early episodes, now one of the things what that kind of started off the podcast. Now I was talking about was when you know when I was start the podcast like a lit way after left university, like lit after way after left university, and trying to find my way out of poverty. And I was at my grandmother's place trying to figure out how in the world I'm going to get rich or as such. And what happened was that, my for somehow, some way, a whole bunch of tomato started to just sprung up at my grandmother's place. And it's like, bro, so what happened was that while I was trying to find my way, how to actually make some money or something to get out of poverty, what happened was that usually I just go around and then I just basically just pick up some tomatoes and carry it to my grandmother, and then she just pick it and such. And what happened was that if you listen to the episode, you realize that that was very very peaceful and therapeutic in the sense that I just go on there, pick up a few tomatoes, and you know and it was very therapeutic and stuff and such. So what happened was that that was back then, when I just left university and such. When I just left university and I just wanted something to kind of distract. No, no, in this phase, this tomato harvest, I'm more wiser in the sense that I I actually I'm more I need to survive and such like that. So all these stuff that I learned over from my grandmother all those times when after I left university during that period when I was trying to figure out of poverty, it become more important now as I actually need to actually use them effectively to actually make right decisions to be where my grandmother was when I left university, because that's a thing where I have perspective. So what happened was, so when I was born, it some my grandma would be somewhat in like retirement and such. So what you may not realize is that when I left university, my perspective was very high perspective where not university smarter or such like that and such. So that kind of let me look down on my grandma's knowledge, going to university and such. But what I did not realize then was perspective where school is one thing, but and in the real world, then there are other things that are important and such like that. And what happened was that I'm not what I was doing was I was comparing a very old grandmother to me young fresh out of university trying to figure out how to make it somewhere, and and so what happened was that all the knowledge and stuff that I had never worked anywhere where I was raised. Never worked anywhere. It made no sense anywhere. So what I had to do was take the time to learn what my grandmother did to actually, and what I realized that she did a various a lot of stuff. And one of the thing was farming and the thing. So I learned a lot of stuff about farming and hard work and such. But what happened was that with the tomato, it, it was really therapeutic and such, pick up the tomatoes and such. And but what happened was that over time, so it beard a lot and it really got high till I basically could feed the whole community with the tomato. That's how much we got from it. I was giving family members random people that just come and visit my grandmother. They just come and pick but that's how much we got from it and such. And then what happened was that eventually it was cut- it, it died out and or cut down or such like that. I don't think it died out. I think it just cut down because what happened was it was growing too large. So what happened now is that um we're in this position now where basically it's it's growing up again, and now I'm at my own place. So what I did was I just basically picked some, and some of them were burst because what happens is that when I grow there, some of them are overgrown, so they burst and have the seeds, and that's how one of the reasons why it got so big and full of harvest was that when we actually pick the harvest, my grandma would go and take out the seeds, separate the seed from like the part that you will cook and such, and then I would throw the seeds back in that place. And then what happened was that those seeds would not grow and such, and that's how it became that big stuff. That's how basically I just took. So what happened was that if you listen to the podcast, realize that I kind of clear up the backyard and such. And what I kind of want to do is just basically kind of replace the weed with some plants and stuff, just because we need food to survive, and then maybe eventually farming sell stuff or such. But you need food to survive. And what happened was that I take some and I put there. We don't know if it will grow because that's the thing. That's the thing. I said back to perspective again. I'm comparing my what would be now recording second year home ownership to my grandmother's what would be how many years ownership, how many years. And one thing about farming is that the the, the ground has to be fertile, and it takes a lot. So so that's the thing about perspective and lesson itself, where you can't compare someone chapter 11 or 10 to your chapter 1, you know, because you do not understand that you can't compare somebody chapter 11 to your chapter 1. So that's one of the things where at my grandmother's place, she put in a lot of groundwork. Farming was her main thing and such like that, and she put in a lot of groundwork, and I'm just basically born into when she was reaping I born when she was reaping many of the profit or such like that, many of the progress. So what I'm seeing is basically the result of hard work or practice as such. So while I took the knowledge and now unfortunately she is gone, what happened now is that experience, and that's the thing about the science as well. You have the knowledge, and coming out of fresh out of university, I never thought experience and stuff was important, but experience is really valuable. The longer you there, you get a more the older you get, more better rounded perspective you understand, and then what happens is that certain tasks becomes easier to do. So what happens is that I may not get it now, but eventually I will understand why that tomato does harvest, and then I will get it at my place, and then boom, then I can become a very, very solidify a very consistent tomato reap planter, and then I can say, okay, I can consistently say, okay, I can. This is how you get tomato, and I can plant it and get it. And so that's how the farming skill grow. Or any skill, take the time to understand. You do some our science, you do some experiment to find out why. So the first thing you do with experiment, and you get the results, and you say, oh yes, we finally get the result. So I finally get tomato comes up, and you're reaping the benefit. The next thing now is to replicate that, to do it again. So in this case, it was done again, but it wasn't done by me. It wasn't done by me or something like that. It was just that it was planted, um and now I'm reaping it. But what happened was that I have the experience from that first time to say, okay, let me just try it over here. So if it reaps over my side of the home now, then what will happen is I would know what it takes to actually reap a tomato, and that's where we start. That's where the farming journey will start, and then boom, couple years later, I become a farming expert. Yeah. So that's the thing about this tomato harvest. That's the thing. You, the thing about farming or any skill or so, it's very boring to actually learn. So while you may hear me say, "Oh, it was kind of therapeutic to actually pick up the tomato," when you were actually picking the tomato, that's why I kind of gave my grandmother to actually pick it. That was really frustrating and boring. you know. But my grandmother having so many years of experience, that was and she was basically just retired and sitting down most time. It was basically just something for her to do, and no complaints, no complaints as such. It was it was basically a nice bonding between me and her. And now I have the tomatoes now, and you just never know what we're gonna do with it. That's the thing about life. You never know You never know how long you're gonna be here, so it matters well when you're here. You just basically find a way to actually make yourself a profit going. So you find all the skills you can and just try to find a way to turn it in a profit. So that's basically for this episode. It's just a nice chill episode about tomato harvest. So the start of the farming journey. You never know. The start. And there's some yeah. So that's basically for this episode. Thank you for listening, and look forward for the next episode. Mhm.
Well, this is the end of the episode. Thanks for watching and look forward for the next episode. To support this podcast, go to anchor.fm/cssb/support or become a sponsor for this episode. If you have a product that you want to have more exposure, DM me on the Instagram page, Reframing Mindset Podcast, or on Twitter at ReframingP. Either way would help. Thank you regardless for listening, and here's a preview for the next episode.
On the night shift and such, and you know, it's one of those things that I never thought I would do. But that's the thing about life. To achieve your goals, you have to certain things that you never thought you would do. You're put in a position, and then you have to try to think about if it's important to do or not. I think, and why I said you have to think about it because there's a lot of wrong way of doing things as well. I don't want to actually say, okay, because I have to do this, I want to go the wrong way. Nah, nah, nah. But what happens is that there are certain things that, you know, in this reality, it's not the ideal thing. But what happens is that, we're, we're just starting. That's one thing that you have to realize as well, perspective and such. You can't compare your chapter one, as I said in a previous episode,